Switched it on. I won't hear you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Vesuvius Committee of the Whole meeting, March 14th, 2023 at 9 a.m. in Council Chambers. Welcome to everyone. First off, we will have the approval of the agenda. Are there any late items? No, there. Thank you very much. So could we have the mover and seconder, please? Councillor King, Councillor Roderica, all in favor. Thank you. And the adoption of some minutes. That would be the Committee of the Whole minutes of February the 14th. Could we have a mover and a seconder for that? Thank you. Councillor Bennett, Councillor Chong, all in favor. Thank you. And we have two petitions, delegations today. And the first one is a presentation on mature trees. And that would be Mr. Yanner. Would you like to come up to the microphone, please, Mr. Yanner?
I'm good. What's that?
Okay. Oh, so I need to move this over here. I'm sorry. Good morning.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor McCordoff and members of the council. I have a problem with my hearing, so I'm going to turn them off while I'm speaking.
Okay.
Before my speech, I have something important to say. Let's go to notes. My presentation is a little changed from the speech I wrote a week ago. Beg your indulgence, we're running a little late. I'll race through as quickly as possible. My name is David Yeager. I represent the quiet majority, countless environmentally concerned residents in the Soviets. I've been a volunteer literacy tutor at the elementary school almost as long as your esteemed mayor. I'm here to plead with the members of town council with the environment and the health of our aging population first. Can't imagine anyone on council not having that as your prime motivation. The UN says mature trees are the most powerful weapons towns have in mitigating the effects of climate change. So this is a great town. Our older trees represent the town's greatest assets in the age of climate change. Why aren't we protecting them? So this is not improving the health and welfare of residents, while developers and property owners can clear-cut lots as the town's tree foliage coverage declines every year. The town and administration have done a fine job overall. Well, in one crucial area, it's failed its citizens. And with this thing, the prime recommendation is the urban forestry plan tabled almost 5 years ago. Though it likely cost 6 figures, it was promptly shelved and buried. You can reach your own conclusions as to why. You'll find virtually none of the recommendations in the town's official community plan is released. The long-awaited 240-page vision for Vesuvius in the year 2040. The urban forestry plan was prepared by a consulting group who relied on a team of expert arborists. The aim of the urban forestry plan was to provide a snapshot of the state of trees along Main Street and the 5 of the town's parks. Even more significant, the plan was to issue recommendations. Someone needs to shine a light at our town's dismal environmental practices, with the greatest resistance to change emanating from the town's planner's office. Gene McKay has demonstrated a breathtaking resistance to protecting our urban forests and refusing to place the long-term interests of residents and visitors above the short-term interests of developers. Some might say the planning department has used our trees as pawns to lure tree-hating developers. For that reason, town council must take the initiative to begin an era of responsible stewardship. You were elected to make tough decisions on behalf of our residents. Here are the facts. The urban forestry plan repeatedly emphasizes prime recommendation: create a tree protection bylaw to restrict the wholesale destruction of mature trees. Developers may love a laissez-faire, no rules world, but it robs residents of beauty, aesthetic pleasure, and life itself. The greatest value of big trees is in their carbon-absorbing, oxygen-spewing abilities. The fact that they provide life-saving shade on hot days is a nice bonus. It also recommended that the town perform proper maintenance of existing older trees. All that has been ignored. The report noted the largest and most valuable tree within the 5 parks examined was the Siberian elm, Same kind of trees and ill-informed arborists consider an invasive species worthy of an automatic death sentence. 8 50 to 70-year-old elms were destroyed just last week behind the museum. Their main offense is that they're invasive species. As first label considered irrelevant in the age of global warming. Elms can live up to 300 years and are hardy and superb drought-tolerant trees. The urban forestry plan was tabled, quote, with no fanfare, said reporter Richard McGuire. His interview with the town planner revealed their strong bias towards the status quo, doing absolutely nothing. And so it has come to pass. 5 years after the urban forestry plan was released, hundreds of mature 20 to 50-foot trees have disappeared from our tree foliage on public and private lands. Thousands more trees have been set on fire as orchards transition to vineyards. We're losing our local lung as the extreme weather gets more extreme and carbon monoxide and pollutants muddy the air. A mature tree can store around 3 tons of carbon, which is released into the local atmosphere immediately when the tree is burned. A big tree can scrub hundreds of pounds of carbon from the skies each year and supply enough invisible, life-giving oxygen for 20 people. Newly planted trees can take about 30 years to scrub carbon and emit oxygen in any quantity, which is why big old trees are so valuable in the age of global warming. Astoria should have been the first, not the last, to enact tree protection bylaw, owing to its fragile ecosystem, its worsening severe heat and arid conditions, and its aged and vulnerable population, saddled with respiratory issues compounded by COVID. My recommendations, I would urge Astoria's Town Council to do 8 things for a healthier, more livable Asturias. 1, enact an immediate moratorium on destroying trees of any species larger than 20 centimeters of chest height at Vancouver standard. Craft a tree protection bylaw that forbids cutting down older trees of any species. Even tiny Gibsons of beachcomber fame on the edge of a vast rainforest with 4 times the precipitation, smaller population, has created a tree protection bylaw. We could copy that. Most advanced municipalities absolutely reject the notion that some types of trees or invasive species that should be automatically destroyed because they're not native to. The pollution, chewing, oxygen emitting qualities are too overwhelmingly important in the age of climate change. 3, ensure that Astoria's administration, planning, and operation employees have access to training to understand the impact of global warming locally and the value of large trees. 4, hire or designate an environmental agent who will work independent of the planning department, have responsibility for tree protection, tree maintenance, increasing our tree canopy, and planting with a separate budget carried out by the operations department. 5, educate the public by adding an educational link to the town's website, explaining the virtue of all trees. Could be the benefit of mature trees in the age of climate change. Explain the benefits of the community and how they not only contribute shade and beauty, but also supply much of the town's fresh air. 6, determine a reasonable budget for tree maintenance and planting. Reduce tree removal costs, which have likely been 3 to 5 times out of the maintenance and planning budget in the last 5 years. Get an assessment of the tree canopy of the Sawyers. What percentage of the town is covered by trees and bushes? The town planner said she had no idea. No one knows, nobody cares. Have a campaign to increase the percentage and think that other towns aim for 30%. Asturias might have 5% coverage. The official community plan promises to increase our tree canopy. An empty promise. How can you increase something you don't measure? 8, create educational material and promote contests in the elementary and high school regarding climate change and its impact on our corner of the world. You must not pass the buck to a later, more environmentally responsible town council.
Excuse me, Mr. Younger.
I told you to stop
Mr. Younger,
being a global warming denying town by doing our part to mitigate the effects of extreme weather.
excuse me,
I'm all true.
excuse me, Mr.
The health and
Younger.
well-being of our residents and visitors, please act now.
Mr. Younger.
Well, you got a couple of lines left.
2 more lines and that's it, because you've given.
I end by adding that on balance, both the town council and operations and planning department are competently run. This is why it's such a head scratcher to see how the environment's been so abused and neglected. Let's up our game to respect our big trees for the amazing job they do. In the process, prioritize the long-term needs of our residents over the short-term interests of developers. Otherwise, the lofty visioning of the OCP is merely a dream, as Shakespeare said, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Are you ready to commit to a better, healthier, more attractive Soyuz? Therein my presentation, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Yanner. We do appreciate that the research that you have done. We will certainly look at this, and it's made us think about it. So we do appreciate you coming here and speaking to us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, Mr. Yanner, just for everyone here, did speak to each of us individually, so we have heard the presentation before. So this is for the public. Thank you very much. And next we have ambulance paramedics of BC, and we have Troy Clifford coming to speak to us. Welcome, Mr. Clifford.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I think I know most of you. If you, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, but thanks for the opportunity this morning to be before you. So 10 minutes is your sort of timeline. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
I'll do my best. I talk fast, and I'll probably have to cut a few things out, but we can
That's
follow
great.
up. And
Go ahead. We
so this
invited you to come, so
Yes.
we're happy to have you.
Thank you. So I come here in my primary role right now as a provincial president of the Ambulance Paramedics of BC, which is the provincial body that represents all paramedics and dispatchers in the province of British Columbia. And that's over about 4,600 members. So that's the ambulance paramedic has a dual role in BC, and I'm going to explain to you why I sort of do a little bit of background. Is that we are the union, the traditional union that represents paramedics and dispatchers and does all the traditional things, bargaining, representation, et cetera, et cetera. But in BC, we're unique compared to most other professions, and in fact, across Canada. We are also the BC chapter of the Paramedic Association of Canada. And what that means is we're the BC chapter of the professional body that represents paramedics. So why those two distinctions are important? It's very unique for our profession. It's just the way it was set up in BC, and that's the way it's always been. It works very well for us, but why that's important is why you see me here. And I have a dual role. Everything sounds like dual, but I have a dual role. You guys are, I'm also the paramedic chief in Osoyoos here. So I run the ambulance station here, essentially is what I'm doing. But because of this role, I'm away a lot, and I have an acting that's in place that assists me when I'm away. But I've been a fair amount of time here, working from here with that. So that's what my dual role is. So I have very good insight, obviously, into the ambulance service here, but it's clear to make the distinction that I'm here in that role as a provincial president. But so that's why you see us at municipalities in advocating for patient care, service delivery, all the non-traditional things, because that's how our members want. That's how they want more skills, they want tools to provide patient care, we want more resources so that we can provide that care to our patients in every community environment. I've met with the majority of municipalities and local governments across the province over the last couple of years, and realizing that we have not had that engagement with local governments the way we should have. And you say, well, we're not responsible for ambulance services as a provincial mandate, but it does impact your communities. And I've learned this from every community I've talked to, whether it's rural and remote, Indigenous community, right up to metro. I met with Vancouver a couple of weeks ago. So why that's important is that's why I'm here to talk to you about how can we work together better? How can we advocate for services for your communities that are the responsibility of the provincial government, the Ministry of Health, ultimately the BC Ambulance Service, the BC EHF that runs the ambulance services. So a number of years ago, we were moved from a standalone entity at the ambulance service, and we've been Provincial Health Services Authority. And so just so you know, I'll provide you the background follow-up stuff, and then we can do some follow-up. So what happened with that is that Leading up to that, we were designated as a public safety occupation, just like our partners in police and fire. So we're designated federally as a public safety occupation. But we're the only profession that crosses two boundaries in the sense that we're also a healthcare profession. And what I mean by that is clinically our care is provided through our scope of practice, through our license, but through our medical side of things and our scope. So, but we cross that boundary, both from public safety to health. And a lot of people want to pigeonhole us into one or the other, but we're very proud of that distinction between the two. I mean, that's why you see us working close with our partners in police and fire, other public safety, correction, border patrol, all those sort of traditional public safety that we're not normally seen at that side of things, but the public sees us that way, you know, in that aspect. So we don't have to be pigeonholed. We actually have to embrace that, and it works better. So that's why you see us integrating with local government and municipalities, is that that's our connection to the community. We work side by side with our police, fire, other partners in patient care, but we also do it with respect to motor vehicle act, public safety. And we have a very good relationship in this community with our public safety partners, and they do a wonderful job. We don't have first responders in Itsuya. That's one of the medical first responders, and that's just the choices of the community. They can opt in or out, and that's a long history. That's a whole nother conversation that needs to happen if it does or not. I know there's a lot of history with that. So we appreciate when we do have assistance from our partners. So I'll park that for a second, and a couple of areas that I want to talk to you about buckets, and I'll summarize this and follow up to you. There's a few buckets that we need to do better at working at. And why I told you about that move into provincial health authority from a move of standalone, that led us a divergence from our emergency management and our public safety side of things, where we were moved a focus on health. Because that's what health authorities do. They run hospitals and they really took us away from our public safety side of things. And over that 10 years, from about 2010 till leading up to the heat dome in 2021 in June, we really did not. They dismantled our emergency management division within the ambulance service. They really took away from our focus on working with our partners in emergency preparedness and training. That's an area we need to get better in the communities. And I'm fortunate that I can work with our partners, and we can do that because we know planning and preparedness and training is a way to be prepared for a natural or unnatural disaster. So in June of 2021, the heat dome hit. Nobody in this province or in the world, but the province was prepared. Unfortunately, 700 people lost, over 700 people lost their lives. And the ambulance service was questioned, rightfully so, their response or lack of it. They didn't even open an EOC level 1, which is basically a virtual EOC. They never communicated any preparedness. And in the weeks following that, their response or lack of it was questioned to the point where the Minister of Health announced significant changes to the ambulance service on July 14th, 2021. New governance, in additional resources, funding. He also, in a temporary announcement in December, additional mental health supports, and he directed the BC Ambulance Service to re-implement an emergency management division within BCHS. That's been done, except it hasn't translated down to the local governments and the local communities where we need to get better working together. So that's one of the areas I believe we can work together. So my objectives here are to advocate for how we can work together. I assist you in arming you with the right questions to challenge the government, the ambulance service, to hold them accountable for the services that they should be providing. So the second bucket is health. South Okanagan General Hospital is closed essentially from 10 o'clock at night till 6 or 7 in the morning. We have to go to Penticton with all our patients unless they're critical, and then we still would have to, but the doctors won't come in. And that's been going on since I came here over 4 years ago. And that's just, it's overfunding and all this sort of, we really need to lobby the government to have a 24-hour hospital that's open and accessible to all patients. That's a basic requirement for level care. We know that we have doctor issues. We don't have an urgent care clinic closer than Penticton. It desperately needs some sort of primary care clinic to serve our patients. So those are another area we need to work together. That'll leave our resources in our community longer. It'll not vacate us for a resort. That's the other area. We have currently a 24-hour ambulance and a day shift call out ambulance. It's not meeting the needs of this community. I met with Oliver less than a month ago and talked about exactly the same sorts of things. So I can work with you on how we can lobby. I'm doing it for my other role, obviously, but provincially, the government put a lot of money investment into the ambulance service. Because in the last 2 years, we now have a full-time ambulance here, which we never ever had before. It was always call it. Oliver now has a 24-hour ambulance as well, but it also has a day shift full-time ambulance. So we need to move to another day shift ambulance. We need to make sure that surrounding communities like Paramedics and that are staffed so that we're not pulled out of this community. Penticton is understaffed, so we all get sucked into the busiest center, leaving potential patient care issues here. So I'm going to cut it shorter here. But one of the challenges that I don't want to see in this community, and we run the risk of this without the resources adequately meeting our demands here. We know that this community surges to incredible amounts of people in the summer. And with that comes work for us and work for your public safety, the police, the fire, all the community resources that go up in the summer, or the department. But we're not seeing that surge to the low levels that we used to in the winter. So these are areas I bucket that I could summarize to you, and we can follow up there and council with some additional information and how we can. And there's a number of ways I've done it with individually. I can help you write a letter. I can give you the tools to ask the right questions. I can just be there as a resource for you. And then it's nice to have somebody you can contact and say, well, this is happening. The last thing I want to do is I met with, see more tragic outcomes like we've seen in Ashcroft this summer when the resources were not there and people lost their life or didn't get the best opportunities for survival. I just recently talked to the mayor and council and where the tragic incident in Insert Town here, and that's really what I'm advocating for, is that we need to make sure that everybody gets an ambulance and a timely need when they need it. And that's not happening in every corner of this province. And although we've done a lot of work, we got to make sure it is. So I'm going to stop there because I could go on all day, and obviously we can follow up. And Jim's laughing at me because he knows that. But I think there's some really good areas we can work together, and it's ultimately for holding the people that are responsible for the ambulance service so that we get better patient care and everybody gets their ambulance in time of need. And that's my motivation. And that's my reason for being here for you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clifford. We certainly were pleased to see that that we have 24-hour care here. I'm going to question one of your statements that you said that SOGH does not have staff between 10 and 6. And I beg to differ with you. There is a doctor there. When there is not a doctor there, I am contacted, so is the mayor of Oliver, and that has not happened for quite some time. They may not be able to deal with the situation if they do not have the equipment there, and that is why the ambulance would be sent to Penticton. But there are many things that they can do during the evening hours, and I know that they're there because they if when there isn't, interior health contacts them. So it just depends on the level of service.
Yeah, so the doctors are available, but we do all get notified when it's out of service or not able to that. There's still staff there, the nurses are there. What they do from 10 o'clock at night is so there's a triage system. So 5 levels. Unless they're critical at the top 2 levels, we don't go into the hospital. They won't call the doctor in to look after that patient. So we have to carry on to Penticton. So anything that's not serious, they won't call the doctor in, even if they're there. So that's the protocol that happens. So we don't stay, we have to carry on to Penticton. We take the resource out of our community for 2-3 hours. So that's the challenge. We really, and really, I understand that's about pay and they've managed to deal with this in other communities. And that's where I don't mean to say that there's no doctor there. And I'm sorry, we haven't had a closure probably since last summer, I think, where we didn't have a doctor available. So it is pretty few and far. So critical patients do get care. And non-critical patients go on to simplify it, go on and pick them. And then we have bypass for serious things like strokes and that sort of stuff. So I think it's really about, we're on the same page, and I didn't mean to diminish it all. And it's really about their pay schemes and that need to be addressed, like they just did it in Point Hardy. So there are things that they're doing around the province to make sure that that service is available for all patients at night. And that's what I think we need to make sure we hold the government accountable to, is it.
And certainly we know that the reason that we've had many of the healthcare agencies come and speak to us is because we want to try and understand it better. And we know that the Ministry of Health has come forward with some positive changes, and that we have to look at as a positive outcome. And we will continue to work for sure with I'm meeting this week with divisions of family practice. And so we continue to look at things, but it is complicated. We totally understand.
Yeah.
So I'm going to see if there's anyone on council that would like to ask you a question. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Councilor Bennett.
Well, is it the same like when an ambulance get called out now and you have wherever they get called out from Penticton, wherever, and you go from here and you get to say Penticton with a patient from here, then you can't leave there till that patient gets admitted in the hospital. And then if there's a call to Paramedics or someone and you're the next ambulance, you could get called there. Is that still the same?
Yeah, so
Or you just come back. So it's not just 2 hours, it could be 4 or 5, 6 hours.
yeah, so we're not governed by obviously municipal boundaries and that, so that system in place, closest ambulance goes to higher calls. If it's a less acuity call, they weigh our dispatchers weigh the need to get them back to their community coverage, balance emergency coverage, all these sorts of protocols. But you're right, if a serious call and we're the closest ambulance clear in Penticton Hospital, and Penticton, that's one of the challenges we see with surrounding communities to larger centers. Kamloops, that, when I was talking about Ashcroft and Barrie, those tragic calls, that's what happened, that those crews were called into Kamloops because they don't have enough resources in Kamloops, and they left those communities uncovered, and that's how, when those calls came in. Well, that happens, reality happens, and that's why we need to make sure not only communities like Esuias are adequately covered, but we're lobbying for places like Penticton to make sure that, so that we, in those situations, Penticton, not a hospital that we see a lot of hospital delays, so we get a quick turnaround there, like we're not stuck in the emerge waiting with a patient. So we're very fortunate with Penticton, but they cover a large area. They have to cover the whole Similkameen and South Okanagan area. I'm very pleased with how well we have a relationship with Penticton, but it took a lot of pressure on them not having local resources. I mean, Paramedics D&T is very limited to capacity and hours, so they see everybody from there. And we've seen staffing challenges that really put a pressure on the system as well. So yes, is the simple answer to your question, Mike.
So Penticton, it's a regional hospital,
Yeah.
and we all pay into it. So we can't duplicate resources everywhere. So I agree that we certainly depend on the ambulance to get us up there if that's what's needed. So we certainly appreciate the work that the city's ambulance does. And do you have a community paramedic?
Yeah, so I cut that out of Todd recently left. He took one of the new spots back on an ambulance, and so we're waiting for that position to be filled. And that's an area we've really been lobbying for more improved enhancement. Is a lot of communities don't have community paramedics, and what they do, there's a lot of opportunities right now where they can support in the community the community health, but also in communities like Penticton and that, where we're talking about. And this is a presentation I talk about, is that the having paramedics part of that community response when we're talking about mental health addictions. We know that the best place for them is not necessarily the back of an ambulance, police car, or emergency room, unless they're having an acute situation. So we're looking to enhance that program to support homelessness, those community resources that they should be part of that team to do the wellness check and refer them to alternate pathways. Without needing to go into the system. So it's not just about adding more resources, it's about getting people the right care. And those challenges, homelessness, addictions, mental health, are a big part of what we're all dealing with. And it's not unique to the downtown east side. We see it every day here. And it's a warm area, so we see a transient population that Penticton has, the higher the demographic, or sorry, the volume, the more you see it. So the South Okanagan has a lot of these challenges that you know, per capita.
Well, can I say that the community paramedic, Todd, was excellent, and I've heard many people say to me, you know, he came over to the house, he was very good at dealing with issues, so I encourage you to continue to work to get another one here, because I think it was really worthwhile. And it was because Karamias had one at one time that there was kind of a push, because we knew that they had one over there, and that was why we pushed, and we were happy to see that.
I'm disappointed that it's not filled right now, but we have a person that's living in town that's off on maternity that will be taking that spot as soon as she returns. So we're excited about that. That program is exactly what you're talking about. And Todd is one of the leaders of it across the province. So we're really disappointed to see him go, but he's really excited about being back on the ambulance.
So does anyone else have any other questions or concerns? No? Well, thank you very much. We know where to find you, and thank you for, you know, I didn't know for the longest time, as I told you, that you were the chief in Vesuvius. Because anytime I saw you on TV, you were in Vancouver. I had no.
Well, I spent a lot of time around the province. So like I said, I'll follow up with the sort of a bucket list of things, and then we can have, you guys know my contacts, and we'll be able to, you know, if you have questions, follow up with me, and or if you say, you know, I'm not sure how that works, that's a resource in either of my hats.
And you're speaking at the RDOS on Thursday.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Jim will be there, so he will hear you again.
Yeah, spending a week here working and doing presentations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clifford. We appreciate you coming and speaking to us today.
And we'll see you soon.
Okay,
Thank you, guys.
Okay, the next part of our meeting, we are going in camera. So I am going to ask for a mover and a seconder that pursuant to section 91 of the community charter, a part of a council meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to or is in one or more of the following. Section 91J, information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Number 2, section 91K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are in their preliminary stages, and that in the view of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interest of the municipality if they were held in public. So could I have a motion, please? Thank you, Councillor King.
Yeah. We're live.
Thank you very much. So we are back in the committee of the whole meeting, and we are going to the next staff report, and that would be the road improvement review. Mr. Brownstein, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. There we go. Never wrong. There's a staff report for you in regards to some road design work that was approved for the 2022 budget year. The designs have now been complete, and we're now going to present 5 sections of road, or 4 sections of road to council in regards to potential for rehabilitation. These 4 sections were outlined in a 2013 road condition assessment, as well as the 2015 road condition assessment as being a high priority. Within that road condition assessment, there are options to move forward with either just a simple overlay or a total reconstruction. What was proposed in 2022 was a complete reconstruction of all these road surfaces. I'm going to kind of start with any questions of council on the 92nd Ave proposal, and then we'll talk about that one a little bit, and then we'll move on to the next road segment. So 92nd, we looked at the entire corridor right from Highway 97 all the way down to Spartan Drive. This was to include a multi-use path on the north side of 92nd, as well as improvements to the road surface, as well as curb gutter sidewalk on the south side. It also included some traffic calming measures as well as street lighting.
Can I just ask, I thought the north side of 92nd was in area A, not the town.
So the road dedication, so the road right of way is town road right of way, but the
Okay.
properties are within the RDOS.
All right. Thank you.
So as you can see, we did an offset multi-use path all the way down from Highway 97, right to Spartan. This allows people to use bicycles, scooters, mobility, etc. And then independent offset trail. We did some lighting improvements to go to full street lights instead of the pole mounted ones that are currently there. We resurfaced the entire road, as well as did a little bit of traffic calming that we did Jubilee and 92nd. There is actually a traffic calm there to slow people down.
Okay.
And to signify across it.
So because we kind of got them right away and maybe the homeowners don't really realize it. If this went forward, especially sort of from behind the gas station down where all those houses are. To, I guess, about 87, we'd be actually taking some of their property. I mean, we kind of own it already, but we'd be putting a sidewalk along there.
So yes, there would be some landscaping elimination on what people consider their private property. Yes, in order to facilitate these upgrades. So in return, they would get a curb better sidewalk as they remove some of the stuff. We tried to minimize the impact to landscaping on those boulevards by shifting the center line alignment, but yes, some of it will need to be addressed in these parts of the project.
So that would the sidewalk kind of get in tilt so the water go back in the road to a drainage and like those properties, there's 5 or 6 of them that go downhill.
Yeah, we contain all the drainage to the road. In that section too, you're speaking of where we actually widen the road down a parking lane in front of those houses, so they
So
should
you're
still
gonna
park
take
in
by
both.
the parking.
But that was the balance between leaving their landscaping or leaving parking, and there's lots of opportunity parking.
So do they have any say in this happening if we move forward? Or-
I mean, we can, if council so desires, we can approach the affected property owners. Unfortunately, the road right away is not there. If all of a sudden that's going, well, we eliminate parking in that section and we don't have any on-street parking, or we eliminate curb better sidewalk and on-street parking. So there's gives and takes. So depending on the scope in which council wants to go forward and the intent of the look, you may not have a choice in the matter. We will have a conversation with the property owners, letting them know this is coming to fruition. Unfortunately, people have a hard time realizing that their property line is usually, 2 meters back from the edge of pavement.
I think it's pretty good there because there's not a lot of cars, nobody parks on the road there. They're all quite a ways in, right?
Yeah, so as you go between 87th and Highway 97, the existing road right away is fairly well utilized. As you go south of 87th towards Spartan, the road narrows, the right of way is there, but the road narrows, so there is no availability for on-street parking. With this improvements, there would be availability of on-street parking.
Well,
Not worse, like, no, okay. I apologize.
No, it's 7 street parking, there's no on-street parking. There's just topographic in the two constraints, yeah. But the 3 meter wide multi-use path goes end to end, which is quite the change.
And then it stops at Spartan, so there's no.
So there's no physical connectivity between the intersection and 92nd and Spartan and to Jargo.
Right.
So that could be something that we put on the to-do list as we expand this. Unfortunately, with Spartan Drive, our right of way is pretty limited. Probably gonna have either look to go towards the lake with a retaining wall or retaining structure or a suspended boardwalk or something along those lines in order to facilitate multi-use movement.
Okay,
Okay.
so is this sort of our I know you've got it as number 1.
No, there's
It
no-
doesn't, I know, but has it been, I mean, they've been asking for this for years, 92nd, it's been on the books for a long time. Does it then get a higher?
So
look?
all 3 of these, your worship, except Harbor Key are actually high priority for rehabilitation and the loss assessment was done. So this will have to be a discussion with council on what your priorities are in regards to these sections of roads.
Which one gets done?
What's done gets done first, the level at which you want to have these built to. You can say that all you want is a multi-use path and resurface it and over go for a better sidewalk. Even not with street lighting, again. This all comes down to costs and the appetite of council in regards to these costs. So for instance, 92nd Ave is a $4.4 million project.
Mhm.
That's to bring it up to this design, so that's forward. Included the road to its typical SO use response. For instance, 74th is a perfect example. We went from a basic road surface to full curb gutter sidewalk, both side street lights, everything else. So what I've seen in the past in this community is we've gone from a rural standard to an urban standard the second we look at doing your paving. So in order to facilitate that, we did some designs to accommodate that full urban standard. With full urban standard comes the price tag that comes with it. So 92nd, we put $850,000 in the budget for 92nd. It's a $4.4 million job. That's a $3.5 million shortfall in funding that we need to look at. I'm gonna actually open the floor to these two gentlemen in regards to 92nd and potential paving, potential costs associated with maybe only doing one leg at a time, what that looks like.
Well, and then the other decision would be to not do any of it and spend that 800,000 to just resurface the existing road as is. Like that's definitely an option. Or defer the idea of a multi-use pathway well into the future. 92nd was constructed, the lower half was constructed in 2000, and I know that because that was the first job I was a site inspector on. But so it tells you like every 25 years, these things come up kind of for resurfacing. So if you did choose to resurface it, it would probably be a 2050 project when we look at building the multi-use pathway.
So the multi-use pathways on the north side, on the south side, there is a sidewalk. Am I correct?
No.
No.
It's
No.
still not to use.
Well, yeah, and just to clarify that, we ran out of right of way. So yeah, Jared, I think there's sidewalk returns where there's a different sidewalk, say at Jubilee, at 87. But the sidewalk just transitions to a 3-meter multi-use pathway as soon as we get away from those intersections. And that's because the road right away didn't allow for a multi-use pathway and a sidewalk. So yeah, there's only sidewalks at the intersections, and then you get crosswalks to the multi-use path, and the multi-use path takes the all the way in that corridor. Multi-use path also changes the side of the road, so it's on the north side from 87 to Highway 97, and it's on the south side from 87 to Spartan.
So the route, the 4 corner stop there where the Elks is. Okay,
Yeah.
so that road going down to Spartan is narrower and it's very steep. So if I had the choice, I would say don't put in a multi-use of biking path down there. Because I can see it being used more on the level, but I'm not sure whether that would be used as much because it's narrower, it curves and it's steep.
Well, then that makes it safer though for people that were, say, coming along the waterfront trying to come up and do some sort of loop. They would have that 3-meter lane
Walking,
to
yeah,
push their bike up even over, and then other bikers can go down. 3 meters lets two-way traffic on.
I get it, I get it, yeah.
I would think that people come down 87th, they're gonna turn left off the trail, and go down 92nd towards the lake. You
Can't go in
from
from that way.
You're not gonna get the bike traffic from the Shell station down to there, when the people walk as much, there's nowhere to be in walk.
Yeah,
You're not gonna walk up the Shell station as much as you're gonna walk somewhere else.
okay, yeah, I get it. Mhm. Yeah,
Usually, like when I'm road biking, I'll just continue through 87th all the way down and move into the highway. So I usually find like if people are biking through 92nd and there's that steepness, for the most part, they're e-bikes.
yes, so they could,
They're
well, that's
accessible.
fairly new, yes. I get it, yeah, for sure. But you're quite right, up at the top from the highway down is probably not the easiest. You bike up there too and go right up to the
I just
highway
continue through,
and then turn to the right.
Blue Sky down there. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Blue Sky and down.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
road.
The logical option to phase it would be to go from Spartan to 87, 87 to Jubilee, and Jubilee to the highway. Like it would be, it
yeah,
could be easily broken into 3 sub projects.
that are of relatively equal value.
Does that mean that you would resurface the whole road, but leave the path as, no, you would do each one?
You would have to do a
all together.
full,
Okay,
full reconstruction, because we're shifting the cross section, and so yeah, we have to,
okay.
we would have to build the curves in different alignments, move center line over, to make room for the multi-use path.
So what could we do for 850,000 that we have budgeted?
We can resurface the road, keep it, and it's a level of service question. Right now, it has an adequate level of service function for what it was done, and we can maintain that level of service and surface, but that's, and if that's the mandate, that's the mandate. The idea of a multi-use pathway, once we got through to it, and when you see the other ones that we're bringing to you today, they became kind of eye-opening moments where we started looking at how we can connect the whole community with these things. There is it's a great vision.
What about water and sewer? Are those needing upgrades? And while you have the road dug up, do you do those at the same time?
Yes, so I'll be seeing you guys lots in the, yeah, water, capital plans, sewer capital plans, are being updated. Those will have some recommendations in 90 seconds, not as many.
Okay.
But that would be the time. That's usually a separate budget that would do it, but we would always look at the utilities. And what we're learning, and is that we should look at them no matter how old they are. The 90-second stuff is relatively new, the lower half by Spartan because it's built in 2000. So it should be in all great shape, it better be. But other places, even if it was built in the 80s, we're finding does need some attention now.
Okay.
And no, the $4.4 million does not include any water.
No, that's what I figured. But I know that you like to do all those things together. If you're gonna dig it up, yeah, you want to check. Okay, so are you going to give us the info on the other ones first and then?
Can I ask you a question?
Oh, sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Did I hear you correct, like, if we move forward this, you could actually upgrade to what you presented, but do it in like sections, so say 1.5 million for whichever section we decided, and then maybe down the road do another one? Yeah, okay, that's good, thank you.
So 89th, so this is from 70th Ave to 62nd. So this is to again, look at that, we got active transportation corridor. We do have currently curb gutter sidewalk on one side of 89, but the other side has been left to a rural standard. These designs will then, resurface the entire road and bring again a 3-meter multi-use path all the way from basically 89 to 78, and then bring it all the way down to 62nd. This one does keep the existing sidewalk on the other side.
Mhm.
So the multi-use path all on one side, and the existing sidewalk remains. And this does include a significant amount of drainage improvements, because there is no sort, we're adding a curb gutter to one side of the road, it currently doesn't happen, so we have to. First, you have to put the water somewhere, so we have to do some drainage improvements to accommodate the upgrades.
And that's sort of the area of the trail, I sort of then looked at it, coming off 87 or 89, think about it, trail here's just for.
Get down that road? Okay.
So again, this would interconnect with Kingfisher, the improvements we've done at Legion, allow all traffic to then multi-use traffic then disperse within the community. Again, we tried to look at that spine within the community. This was also outlined in the active transportation network plan. And this one being a $3.2 million project, with a current budget of $600,000, we're 2.6 short. Again, this is another one of these. Actually, this one is going to be hard to phase. This one's more challenging to phase for sure. Again, because the curb or the edge of the road on the west side is moving over right into the lane. We're narrowing 89 through this design to make room for the multi-use path. And therefore it'll have a significant jog if you try and phase it somewhere halfway along.
There is in the water capital plan that you haven't presented yet, a major water upgrade that will be done at the same time in this one, so that this one will be tied in with a significant water main upgrade.
So it crosses the highway there, you do something on the north side of the highway and then continue on the other, you're not messing with the highway.
No, we can't mess with the highway worship. There might be discussions at some point with LTI and where the thralls are doing a safety assessment of this corridor. I don't know where they're at with it. So there might be some discussion with them to improve that crossing. I'm not making any promises, but we could have the discussion. The piece north of the highway could be phased, I guess that is logically, but it's such a small section and it provides that connection to the rest of the network that I think it's important, but it could definitely be deferred.
Yes, that part on the north
Yeah.
could be.
It's just a main upgrade. Kind of slotted forward.
The sewer upgrade? For the water?
Because you mentioned that there's gonna be a significant main upgrade.
There's gonna be a significant water main upgrade. I think it's in the current modeling that we're doing. It's about 7 years out is when it's required. So anytime in front of there is would be, fine. Part of this work with the OIB, it could be triggered earlier by the OIB if they need significant upgrades.
Any questions in regards to 89? Comments, concerns? The next one on the list is Leander. This is again continuing that vision of the spine within the community. So this would be an upgrade up to the including so this would include finishing the east side of all Leander to have 3-meter multi-use path. There's currently a curb gutter sidewalk on the other side. So we then put a curb gutter and then a multi-use path on the east side of the Leander, which will eventually, once designs are complete, we'll continue right down to a T-shaped court, which would then connect to
So we was.
Thank you.
Mark.
Yeah, this one preserves the existing curb gutter sidewalk that is probably about 20 years old on the one side of the current side of the road, and basically narrows the road again, make room with that multi-use path.
So again, this is a $2.1 million project. We originally tagged 290,000 for this, so we're short 1.8.
Is the multi-use path on the west side?
It's on the lake side.
Oh, on the, well, you couldn't very well put it on the other side, could you? You know, the guy that's got the house that he's been building for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
He's got, he has to put out cones on that curve there in order to back his car out to it. It's crazy. Anyway. Yeah, that's tricky because it is a busy road and there's that curve there. You know, anyway, okay.
Yeah, this one doesn't phase well either.
No.
Like
no,
the phase shown is kind of the logical first phase, that ends at Magnolia, and the second phase would be carried forward. But the sections beyond Magnolia aren't slated for reconstruction in the current road capital.
Okay.
So last but not least is Harbor Key. This one's going to be interesting discussion. The only reason Harbor Key was put on the list for this design phase was to look at the potential to eliminate flood issues. So the initial designs that were looked at, I think, raised the entire road to 1.2 meters. Which would landlock and potentially have issues with every property owner on that road. So in order to build that up, one construction is not going to happen. Once probably redevelopment has happened along there and all the homes get constructed with flood construction loans, then you might want to look at maybe rebuilding Harbor Key effective level. But right now, it would just be a construction nightmare trying to now mold driveways into a road that's a meter higher than it was, and now you're gonna start creating bellies within our properties and so. Instead, we looked at it from a reconstruction perspective. So the $2.3 million estimate for this is just a reconstruct the current road. This is not for any improvements. This is just to go in and actually provide proper structure for the paving surface there, to resurface, and to provide erosion control along the lake side far end. So what we're noticing too, with the amount of high water events we are having, is the road is slowly being undermined. We may lose it the next 5 to 10 years where the road is like washing into the lake. Part of this is a $500,000 sanitary sewer rehab. We cambered that road just to see where we're at with our sanitary sewer, and we're noticing significant amounts of structural failures. So we go in and do part repairs on those structural failures, and go and reline the entire length of that sanitary sewer.
That's included.
That is included in the 2.3 million, yeah. So for the amount of homes this services and the costs associated with rehabilitating them, this is a very significant contribution by this community for that road. There may be grant funding available to do some of the erosion control aspect, but in either we have the road to be 100% grant funding. The road structure is what I would consider non-existent. So hence why you see it alligating the way it is. It's just crumbling underneath. There's nowhere for water to go. So it's just a great big sponge. We got a little
There's no base gravel and you know, then you just need no understanding how it was built, when it was built. Elevation and or structure wise, there's no.
So it was actually built, it wasn't there before, and it was, or was it, like when that was a kettle? I know they opened it up,
No,
So-
sorry, yeah, no, I'm not suggesting it was built, sorry, the road was, just paved on whatever material happened to be out there. Which is why the road is completely falling apart, with definitely flooding events.
Mhm.
And then, you know, covering the sewer, I guess, given its age, it's not a surprise that we need to do some repairs, but also with flooding, it's probably accelerated some of them. Like Jared said, we did look at raising the road to get it out of the flood, and that made every driveway a problem, every single driveway and every front yard. And so in this case, we're proposing to install a valve on the sewer line so that we can just turn it off when the flood gets too high, and that road has to be evacuated to go getting water.
Well, the last time that happened, when it was flood down there, there were people that did not evacuate. And they wanted us to put a porta potty at the end of the road for them. That was a bit difficult, so we certainly don't want to go through that again. Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I guess my concern is more about all the things you've identified with the sewer pipe down there. You got cracks and leaks, and obviously you can't get any closer to the lake. So I would really like to see some sewer work done there.
So through the chair, Councilor King, the sewer work will happen no matter what, because again, it's just, it needs to be rehabbed. It'll be whether or not council wants to move forward with the other 1.5 million to do the road work.
Could we do this, like, do the sewer and then just repave? Like to save the million?
What we do is repatch where we made the repairs. You could resurface that road. I gave it 10 years, you can be back in there resurfacing it again. There's no structure on the road to support the pavement, and that's the problem with the pavement. Continues to flex, the pavement flexes and becomes alligator. The other option is CO reason, so nicely pointed out, is we just paint a little damping of concrete. That is an option. Concrete has come down in price because asphalt pavement has gone up in price. However, concrete paving is a very specialized procedure, and I don't know if there's anybody in Canada that does it.
Yeah, there's a company, I think, in Winnipeg, that has a road extruding machine to do the road. This would be too short, but we could look at some of it, trying to figure out if we can price that, but definitely not something we've done, but with the cost of asphalt, they can see it starting to cross curves.
it would last longer then, is
So
that why?
the concrete becomes now, you'd have to put in structural reinforcement.
Yeah.
All that stuff. Concrete then becomes rigid.
Cost more.
Pavement is designed to flex, so asphalt pavement is designed to flex. It's designed to do this constantly. In other words, as with anything, it starts to deteriorate, the flexes and flexes and flexes. Concrete's a little more rigid, you'll get probably like 75 years out of it. That's why interstates in concrete.
But over time, your concrete will still sink, even reinforced.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the water levels, the being lecture said there's no base under there. There's no real gravels, it's just organic material. As it gets wet, it's like a sponge. it
Yes, yeah, for
expands. So whatever you do to that surface, if you don't do the gravels. 3 years later, well, however long, it's gonna be alligator cracked again. Right to the limit. Number one, I mean, ideally, there's no drainage, there's nowhere to put the water that falls on the road. You're subject to flooding, subject to. There's so many variables here, we can't raise the road.
Yeah, I agree. I guess you kind of come and put an order. I'd prefer to see this one moved up personally because of the sewer issues. And if we can find some money to look at doing this one with the sewer improvements. Would be my thought.
So putting it as number 1 on the
Yeah.
list of 4.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the flood mitigation grant funding that, like that.
No, it's already been allocated. But you guys are getting 2.5 from the province.
That's right. That'd be good.
So anyways, there's a few other discussion points, for council, Again, this is, as we start to look at these road services, we start to look at these road sections, they become more and more costly to continue to want to design and build and to maintain. One thing I just want to put into the community's ears is, one, prioritizing these 4 projects, which Councilor King was already kind of alluded to. But again, looking at the other 3 corridors, what's important to you guys. As we continue to look at our road services, as we continue to look at our road cross sections, there's a lot of roads in this community that are left at rural standard within the downtown core. There's a lot of that are now starting to show signs of deterioration. This is just the beginning. This $11.9 million ask is the beginning of what's going to be coming in the next 5 to 10 years. This is where the discussion with councilors to have, and these, or Mr. has already alluded to, level of service. Where does council want to see this start to come? Do we just want to start resurfacing our roads and not worry about trying to improve? Or do we want to say that these particular corridors are now going to be improved and these ones are not, we're just going to continue to resurface? And then this leads me to the conversation with you guys in regards to a transportation master plan. So the development of transportation master plan is that guiding document like we talked about for water and wastewater, but for our road systems. And then we can have this deeper discussion and we can have these detailed guiding documents to say that, we're not going to improve 60 or 72nd. We're just going to leave it as is. We're just going to resurface it every 30 years when we need to. Bob's your uncle. However, 89th we feel is a very important corridor to the community. No, we're going to keep this to a full urban standard. We're going to make sure we put in the appropriate improvements. We're going to put in street lighting. We're going to make this look good. So those are the types of things that with our transportation master plan, we start to flush out and get that long vision thing. The other thing that needs to be done, which we haven't done in a while, is a road condition assessment. So the last one was done in 2015 from you guys. That's been a while. So that's 8 years ago. Our roads have continued to deteriorate where we haven't put any money into them to keep them maintained. So one of the things that will help drive your master plan is that condition report. The other thing we need to look at, and we talk about this more than time again, is asset management. We're looking at the asset management from our water and wastewater side. Now it's time to talk about our roads. We don't have an asset management plan, and this is where the condition assessment goes is the transportation master plan. So the things the transportation master plan will start to do is, look at improvements driven by development, look at improvements driven by population growth, look at improvements driven by connectivity improvements that have been identified now in your active transportation network plan. And then your asset management plan will then start to outline, okay, are we gonna do, when are we gonna resurface this road, when are we gonna resurface this road, when are we gonna resurface that road, when are we gonna rebuild that road? These are all key documents in trying to, again, give you guys that foreshadow for the next 20 years in regards to your capital requirements and the costs associated with these capital requirements. And that is one of the recommendations that's coming out of this report. That is something the committee recommended the council that we start to move forward with that in 2022. As well as surprising back in some what roads you might not see that.
I just have a point.
Go ahead.
Not to get going.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately. Is there a way, because the next point on the agenda, I have some strong opinions on, is there a way to push that to the next account?
Are you talking about the health one? Yeah.
Yes, the council has the ability to postpone an item, which a motion would be required in council to do that. Because we knew this was a pretty big agenda, and so definitely push things off. I know integration, we committed a lot as part of the strategic objectives report, or strategic objectives plan that we've supported, and so as long as you're okay with us missing a couple deadlines there, delaying some, absolutely.
Well, I'm okay with that too, because I'm going to Division Family Practice meeting on Friday, which may give us more information that would, so.
I will pass a motion to postpone the last point, not your point.
Yeah, how, you'll let Nancy Pilson word that take it off the agenda today and add it to the next one. Thank you. And it's been
So
seconded.
we just postpone it to a later date, depending on what else comes up. Is that
Absolutely.
Okay.
A later date, yeah, rather than the 28th.
depending on?
Okay, if we might, yeah, okay. Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
So if you have to go, is there anything else on this issue that are, the recommendation is that it's number 6 from the option, which seems to make sense. Does anybody? In favor of that one? Yeah, so option number 6 on page 22, and it's included in the recommendation. Everybody, is there a seconder for that?
Oh, wait, we already have a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
So the motion was moved by Councillor Chong, seconded by Councillor Patarika, that the committee postpone the medical professional recruitment to a future committee of the whole meeting.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. Now, we need to go back to this report from Director Bronstein, so that. All right, so is there, what about, does anybody have any suggestions, any other questions, or would you like to make the recommendation? Sure.
To Director Branson. 3 of the roads here currently have been identified in our active transfer plan for I think it was proposed Bay Trail, I believe, bicycles allowed. I think that's the standard that we hopefully be looking for in those. How much of that project, obviously, I think would be a good portion of that project, which I think at the time figure was around 5 million over a period of time. We'll half of that project. Those improvements.
Cost of multi-use path, portion of the road.
Well, and your 89 to make something.
Well, it's, I guess it's a question of what you're comparing it to, like if the multi-use path was compared to having a sidewalk instead. It wouldn't be significantly more, but if you looked at it as opposed to just doing the current standard, and then there, it would almost be all like the whole difference in the cost. Because the pavement you're surfacing is one thing, the whole curb, gutter, shipping roads, adding drainage. I mean, a lot of it's been triggered by adding this 3-meter multi-use path to these 3 roads.
Yeah, to answer your question, I'm not 100% sure on the exact cost conversion from the active transportation.
Or even on the linear side, and it's like a good portion of that project where you
we would be able to achieve, I think, a good portion of the active transport plan. By implementing based on design, yes, correct. So, yeah, the active transportation plan does speak to these designs and vice versa. Okay.
So is somebody wanting to, figure out where we're gonna go on this, make a motion or?
So I guess the only other discussion I just want to have quickly with the committee is,
Yeah.
What's your priority in regards to these roads? Councilor.
If I have to make a motion, I'd make a motion that Harbor P becomes number one. And then I'd like to see the 89th 2 and move your number 1 down to 3.
92nd. So, but if you did, to what level are you thinking?
Oh, I
about Harbor Key?
do the proper levels of these designs, is what I'm recommending.
Do you want fuller to center for all? Three.
Yeah.
But you're not raising the level of Harbor Key.
No,
No,
actually,
no,
no.
no, just the, yeah, okay.
No, we need level of service of these roads. You want full curb, gutter, sidewalk, multi-use path, street lights, traffic calming, everything included in design. Are there elements you guys want pulled out to do cost savings? Are street lights that important to you? Are traffic calming measures that important to you? Is an offset multi-use path that important to you? You just want to communicate.
What do you think? I think the sidewalks personally are the most important because that allows walkers, and, scooters. But, Myers may have a different opinion because we want that, maybe we don't have to have every road around,
No, and your worship, I guess I just don't want to get done on that, just for these
Yeah.
three sections.
Oh, I know.
We'll have the conversation regards to the rest of the community later.
yeah, no, and I meant just these.
Okay.
But, do we need to put in the path, which obviously is a lot more money? Or do we do the road surface and put a sidewalk? I don't know. What do you think, Myers?
I just feel on these three, like Jared just said, basically they're gonna be part of the, I think the master plan for the bike trail. To go through town and help the others, I think identified in there. And so if they ever say a different road back away from the other bike trails or trails on connecting with the bottom of 92nd, yeah, you only come down from the bottom this one way. But a lot of people use that, so a lot of cycling is kind of a key place, so I think that would be the case. I think if you're in the top half of it from the shell down, I don't think it's important because you don't have the bike track, you don't have the foot traffic. So
So
I
that
agree.
could be divided into 4 sections as well, as was pointed out.
Three sections.
Yeah,
Or I agree with Jim, and if you had to cut something out, I would just say from the Shell station to 92nd, maybe just a sidewalk, rather than trail. Think of wide trail. This is gonna use more than just people walking there and not living those few houses.
okay, so
Just,
go ahead.
sorry, one other question. Obviously, 89th with, upcoming construction activity in that area. Is there an urgency or a need for some of those improvements to go into place prior to the development? Yeah, she's talking about the multi. Yeah, county development. West side.
Yeah, Gina has asked for them to put deposits down for the construction per this design, but not to do it. So the town's gonna be accepting payment for whatever responsible to development.
But from a looking and connectivity perspective, probably would the corridor she's looking at. More closely, maybe speed up on your rehabilitation of that. Again, if this, unfortunately, as this comes down to money and trying to accommodate all of this in our capital plans, is going to be a challenge.
Of course.
But if we give you these thoughts like Jim said, he was really like, kind of see, that gives you the direction, they go back and say, here's what it's gonna cost you guys, now you have to make the
Big decision, yeah.
But I just want to emphasize, I mean, it is. You always have the opportunity to back out later, but going all in now, if you don't have intention of going at least like quite a bit of ways. there's a lot of costs associated with that, right? So it's if you are really feeling that you want to do the full service, great. But it really helps to know that you're in like at least 80-90%, right? It's just, you can pull out, I mean, obviously we want to know 100%, but it's going this way, going through all these costs and then pulling out is not a great.
Mhm.
So,
there's a lot of work.
for instance, Harbor Keys are already done. You know, we haven't included the, like I say, 600 grand to rehab the sanitary sewer within our sanitary sewer capital program. So that's gonna be a $500,000 hit that we have not included within that rate structure. And then to come up with the other 1.6 to rehab the road, is that coming out of general revenue? Or were you expecting us to fund 80% and try to find grant funding to accommodate the rest? So those are the types of discussions that, if Harbor Key is something you want to tackle, I guess those are discussions that we can have at budget time. However, there has to be some appetite from council to even move that forward. If we're not willing to put in the 1.6 to do it, then I'll just rehab the sewer and we'll walk away from the road. But if you're only wanting to put in $500,000 to rehab the road, we'll just resurface it and walk away. So this is the kind of, when we talk about level service and what we want to do. These are the, unfortunately, these are hard conversations. Again, 90 seconds is another good one. We'll have ultimately council that wants to do from 87th to Spartan, and that's all we'll do with 87th to Spartan. We'll leave the rest of it alone, and we'll resurface it. But there's a cost of resurfacing as well, which is not currently included in anywhere.
We would have to resurface the other, we didn't choose to.
You can choose to leave it as status quo. The problem is the longer you leave it, the more it's going to deteriorate, the more it's going to cost in the long run to then go in and rehab. And that's the thing that we've got to start getting ahead of, is instead of leaving our infrastructure to the point of needing complete replacement, trying to get it back here where we can rehab it so it's not quite as much and give us another 30 years. Instead of waiting till it's done and then we're putting in 5 times the amount of money because now the infrastructure is done.
I personally think that you do half-ass it and then have to keep putting it together ends up costing us more, like you just said, in the long run. So if we go all in and say, okay, these are the 4 projects and you come back and we have to do something, maybe out of the 4 projects, we just say we can only do 3 out of the 4. I'd rather do 3 right than to do 4 half-ass, in my mind.
These are budget items per year, they're not all in 1 year. So again, we get to look at it next budget, you just want to sense, are we kind of positive going forward with these items to 80% or 90% right now, which I feel I'll support it.
And again, the committee, I mean, are these 10-year projects for you guys? Or are these 20-year projects for you guys? Or are these 30-year projects for you guys? Keeping in mind, the more you defer it out, the more money it's going to cost us down the road. But again, when you're looking at $11.9 million and you're looking to self-fund that $11.9 million, that's significant.
That's over 5 years and hopefully there's some grants come forward.
There will be grants for the after transportation aspect. I can almost guarantee it. Road rehab, not so much.
Harbor Creek has almost, well, very little chance of grant except for maybe the erosion control work. But the other 3 are really good in that I would declare them shovel ready right now. Like the designs are sitting in front of you, they're ready to go.
Yeah.
And so as those grant programs come up, especially the active transportation one, you will be in a great spot to make an application. And they are part of a bigger plan. And it's really easy to see and yeah, shovel ready is a way to do it. So you really are in a good spot for grant funding.
Yeah, again, I just like to see the 3 change in order and I support the full support of moving them into the budget.
Yeah, so if you look at, some of the discussion points, option 3, I mean, if we look at 92nd, funded in 2026, this is just some numbers thrown out there. We look at 1/3 funding model,
Yeah.
and we get 1/3 from the province to the feds. That still comes up with 1.5 million pounds put forward. You could start saving that over the next 3 years at $500,000 a year, but that now eliminates any other capital projects you're doing for the next 3 years because that funding model is very finite. So either we look at other opportunities, or we say, no, we're gonna defer this one out 6 years and then. Hopefully have the 1.5 saved up, or we're gonna borrow the 1.5, and then puts us in a bigger deficit. Again,
I mean, if you say that hypothetically, these got changed and we change the dates, when it comes budget, we could move them 2 years out then if we choose to. Depending on what comes forward as funding.
But I think the one struggle, and I don't think we're not trying to be difficult, or it's just a real conundrum, and so. Yeah, it's good to know where you're at. The other problem we're gonna have, when grant funding does come available. Unfortunately, sometimes we've got 60 days. 60 days or 70 days or 90 days to respond, and so we're sitting there going, okay, it is in the, let's say, 3-year plan or 4-year plan. The next question would be, well, if we got this opportunity to get $500,000 or $1 million, 25% of that project funded, do we even throw our hat in the ring and do that grant application? There's so many different moving pieces, and there'll be a bit of a swirl here, but that's how difficult I think it is from our perspective, is to understand where you're at and how much flexibility you want to give administration and being aggressive and acquiring grants, or no, hold off a bit, let's wait for 2 or 3 years and then we'll start applying on type of stuff. So I don't want to throw it more and more out there, but it's one of these things that we don't want to be accused of. That we heard your number one priority, all of a sudden this grant came out. So we're thinking 3 years out, but we missed this $1 million, so we're doing it, and then we're upset with administration.
So. I guess the only one I'm really looking at, I'll get shut up in a minute here, is the Harbor Peak is sewer. And we all ran on sewer and water, so to me, this one is very important to move forward next year. As it would move up in priorities. The other ones, again, depending on what else comes at us. I think it's nice to be aware, it's nice we're shelf ready. If you think it'd be appropriate, move them 2, 4, 6, 8 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, we can't really give you a defined answer at this time because we don't know what's coming at us. Other than you keep asking for money.
and
right now,
Councilor King, I will continue.
that's what you do. But in my opinion, I think sewer and water is the most important thing in this town right now. That's all we hear about.
And to the chair, Council, I agree 100%. So throwing the sewer aspect off to the side, it's gonna get fun, we're gonna do it. It's golden.
Yeah,
Do you want to make any other improvements to Harbor Peak?
well, again, I can give you my 2 cents worth. I go back to 89th, I think, is the main corridor in this town, and it should be looked at next, but maybe in 26 or something instead of 25.
Okay, so what I'm hearing now is, if I take the sewer and I go deep,
Let's do it.
let's do it, go away. He's gonna go, yep, okay, done.
Yeah.
Are we doing anything else on Harbor Peak?
Well, we have to do something with the road. We're gonna be in there.
What you presented,
Okay, so.
the top one,
So
2.3
million.
600 to sewer.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
No, and that's what I want to hear, is I want to know where council's mindset is at in regards to this, if they're willing to spend $2.6 million on that road. I will give them their marching orders and say, let's go spend $2.6 million on a road.
Well, it would be lovely to be able to afford to do them all, so obviously that would be the best scenario. So if we have to make a choice, is there anybody else in agreement with, okay, Zach is in agreement with Jim. I can see all of them as being important, so I'm okay with that. But that means that the next one you're suggesting, Councillor King, is the 89th Street.
Yes.
Yes. And so if we did this one, Harbor Key, now could we do 89 in 2 years? Does that make sense?
That would have to.
Hypothetically, again, yes.
Aren't they gonna come back? And then we're gonna make that decision? Why are we making that decision?
Well, I'm not asking for
Well,
decisions. right now.
no, we're just kind of giving their priorities.
Want some suggestions so that when I can come back to you guys at a later date saying, okay,
And then really ask for the money.
here's what you can spend, here's how it's gonna impact X, Y, and Z.
Cause I go down Harbor Keys and you can't even ride your bike down there, or walk down there. I mean, it's that bad.
Because the road's bad.
Yeah,
Would you
really is.
Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, okay, with that.
I guess just in the comment periods too, and given Drew's comment earlier about, consider these
pretty much shovel ready projects. If we can explore the grant opportunity now to push these forward. And expedite that time frame, if the opportunity comes up, I feel pretty comfortable now that, if we've got some shovel ready projects ready to go, that we can act on. We have them on the table ready to go. These seems like, these are quick wins as far as I see moving forward. If those opportunities come up and are available for us to, for some staff resource of time to acquire.
So. I agree 100%, so I just need to know what council's appetite is in regards to grant funding. So if we were successful on 30%, do you want to report the project? So at, a $4.4 million project, if we get 30% funding from provincial or federal grants, we can afford the project.
Well,
Because those unfortunately, that's the stuff that administration now is go, okay, well, we can find you this grant, but it's only gonna pay 30%. Do you now want to wait till we can find another 30%, another 30%, and we try to add it all together, and then we're still 30% short, so we funding that last 30% ourselves, whereas. This is all the things that go through my mind as I'm trying to panel this stuff out, is okay, so I still need $1.5 million, which isn't in the budget. Where is it in the budget?
For me, Jared, I think that's part of the problem is when we do that, you say, okay, well, we only got 30%. And we were hoping to get 80%, as long as in the budget, there's a way that Jim can move those figures around, I'm fine with that. Where before, it was kind of like, well, oh, just man, that's all this extra money, we can afford it, then that's fine. So to answer that question, how do we know if you only get 30%, if we can afford 70%? I'm fine with saying, let's just go ahead, if you only get 30, and with shovel ready and that grants there, we get the 30% use it. But how can I say today that 70% we can afford it?
I guess I'm not asking the question whether or not council can afford it, it's whether or not council wants to afford it. And that is the path that we need to start walking down, is whether or not council wants to afford these projects. If we were successful on 30% and we said we were going to go after the whole entire 92nd corridor, because that's council fund priority. It's a $4.1 million project. We got 30%, which is $1.2 million. So are we coming up with the other 3.1?
could we take the 30% and say we're gonna do one section of it?
So this is the struggle that the administration has with grant funding, is when we start going in for this.
Yeah.
And then we turn around, oh, well, you only gave us this, so now we're gonna reduce our scope. The province starts to look negatively
I
on
know.
our systems. So if you're only interested in going ahead with $1 million a year for road rehabilitation, then that's great. And that is all we will look for, that is all the money we'll put towards it, and we'll try to offset it via grant funding. Going, okay, well, we'll go after this grant funding. Well, hopefully we're successful. However, if all we have is $1 million, that's all we're doing.
Well, we have to put some kind of a scope on it because we've got water and sewer and a bunch of other things too. We can't tuck it all into one and then not have enough money for the others. So.
And that's gonna be and again, when we bring this back at budget time, I apologize, I think so, almost lunchtime.
Keep talking.
These are general revenue type activities. This is general taxation projects. So this has nothing to do with utility. Utility is over here. Utility is what we do with it, with self-funded, we try to make users pay for it, etc. These projects, unfortunately, are the big ticket items. They're the high visibility projects. So when the community sees them happen, they're like, wow, that looks nice. They don't really care about the water main on the ground, they don't care about the sewer main on the ground, as long as they get flushed with toilet, they turn on the tap, they work. So to them, it's like, yeah, whatever needs to happen. When you start dealing with roads and sidewalks and multi-use paths and trees and I mean, we didn't incorporate any green space in any of these projects. There is no street trees, there is no nothing. These are the niceties. These are the high value impact projects. But unfortunately, the most expensive because they come out of your general revenue funds. And they're usually not grant funded very well in regards to rehabilitation. They're grant funded very well in regards regards to your package transportation. Package. And they may throw some money at us in regards to the crossing, and they might throw some money at us, and we'll look at ICBC, we'll look at the Ministry of Transportation, we'll look at all these other grant funding, but they're not huge dollars. For instance, the multi-use pathways down Highway 3. We were hoping for, I think, $300 and something thousand in grant funding, we got 20. So then we had to make up the costs associated with that. So your active transportation grant funding is quite huge money, it's not gonna pay for 80% of the project. Right, it's gonna pay for maybe 20. And then. Sorry.
Yeah, no, we get it, which is why we're at this point. What do we do? Because if we say, yes, we're gonna do this, when we don't get very much, we've got to come up with the money somehow.
And what if they don't have that money?
The other option is you reduce your service level. So you say, instead of doing this little curb gutter sidewalk beautification, all this kind of stuff, you repave the road. You've now
If we
saved your
don't-
infrastructure, you've now gotten your infrastructure over that hurdle, it's now gonna last you another 20 years until you decide what you're gonna do.
Oh, we apply for that grant, we only get 30%.
Yep.
What if we don't have the 70%? What if Jim comes in and says?
Well, then we would cut back on, that's what I was wondering, can we cut back on this? Can we just pave the road and not do everything? No, because if they give us the 30.
Well, if they're gonna put the 30, it's gonna be towards active transportation, they're gonna wanna see that trail though.
I got one more
Yeah.
question.
Maybe if I could just answer that question, I mean, at the end of the day, it's, and Jared made this comment, but what does council feel comfortable with? That we are going to be accumulating significant debt over the next few years for a lot of things, and again, Jared's correct, it's gonna be utility, which is one bucket, and the rest of it, there is significant borrowing. Our total balance sheet's gonna be reduced by $33 million in 5 years, and some of those projects might get pushed out, some might happen faster. These, we were pushing here in the next 5 years, they weren't budgeted, so that 33 million is gonna go more. At the end of the day, it's a need of taxpayers, and if there's need of count or a wish of council to move one of these projects forward, the money will be there, and we'll do one or two or three things. One is there's another project that is a lower priority that we can push out, that's one thing. But then they would always borrow. That there is always that opportunity, so can we afford it? It really depends on the five around this table as to how much debt we want to incur. And then you've got those loan payments, right? So we do know, when I looked at what was presented to council before, within our region, within the Okanagan here, looking at the various municipalities, we were about $800 less combined municipal tax and utilities. So that's just the average of these communities, but there's also a political aspect to it. And it's too bad we weren't at $800 because we have a heck of a lot more in reserves, and I think it'd make these decisions a heck of a lot easier. But we're in a big catch up, and it's really what the vision of council is. How tourism is our industry, how much do we want to start investing in this to keep it really, really, really attractive? Or do we want to make it more attractive, or do we want to keep it where it's at? So to answer, I guess, the specific question, money can be made available, depends on how aggressive council wants to be with regards to incurring debt and raising of taxes. That kind of help. It's
Not really, it kind of, I'm still, to me, I'm still sitting there saying, what, if that thing is $100 million and we only get 30 million, there's 70 million that somebody has to come up with. We're agreeing to say, we love this $100 million project and don't think it's 70%, just like the park, right? Well, we hope we get it because then we get more, but if we don't, we gotta come up with 70 million. So you're saying to me, I'm going to make a decision today to kind of say which direction you want to go. I love it, let's open the million, let's fix the town, let's do it properly. Let's do that. But at the day we apply that the money's here, now we're applying for the grant, now when we get 30%, now you gotta come back and say, okay, you guys gotta come up with $7 million more. And I gotta say, I don't know if I can do that because I don't know if we have $7 million to be able to do it.
Well, they would readjust things is what I'm saying.
I know.
Yeah, I know, I agree,
What
it's
does that
scary,
mean?
What?
I mean,
but you know what, no matter what we do, it's scary, isn't it? Jim?
Thank you, Madam President. I think it's great to have these on the shelf ready to go. I go back, normally we're aware of them. We know there's a bunch of money that might have to be spent. Usually you come back and mention there's a grant opportunity for X amount, whether it's 30%, 70%, and we can make a decision at that time. So why do we necessarily have to think ahead with these and kind of say we're in favor of them when we gotta wait for a report for you to see if there's any funding on any of them, like a normal procedure?
So through the chair, council, I guess what we're trying to do is start thinking of the bigger picture. Start thinking, because what I struggle with as director of operations is knowing how much money I have each year to spend on certain activities. Right now, it varies year to year to year to year to year to year.
Okay.
Some years, it might be $50, next year it'll be $100, and the year after that, it might be $75. From my perspective, from a planning perspective, in regards to capital programs, it's nicer to know that council wants to say, you know what, we're gonna spend $250,000 a year on those. That's it. That's all we want to spend. That allows me now to come back to you guys and say, okay, I've got 250 grand that I can now go after this grant funding that may get us another 250 grants, and I have no. Now we'll build this. Because I know that this is part of your program. I've got $500,000. I'm gonna go build that. Oops, sorry. And that's it. We're good. We're golden. Right now, with the way this information is presented to you guys, I'm not gonna get you for $11.9 million, which is unachievable. Yeah, completely. Out of these projects, what are your priorities? You nicely give me that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Out of these projects, my now high priority is Harbor Key. Okay, now I've got to go back and reestablish my sewer fund to show this $500,000 hit, which I'm going to be coming back to you guys for another, I think, another $750,000 hit for Magnolia, because I got to redo some sewers there. So now I'll just hit you with another 1.5 mil, and that's just your sewer fund. General revenue, I don't, if I come back to you for $750,000 to make a section of this town, that's more capital than I have in a year. How do I fund it?
Joe, can I ask you a question? Yeah, if we did something, say, okay, well, the next 5 years, here's gonna be $5 million going into each one of these projects. And $5 million is committed. And our CEO comes back and says, that's gonna be a tax base of 3% or 5% to everybody in the community. And we have to live with that as guys, and we say, yeah, we're gonna agree to that because we want to fix the town up. Then you've got $5 million for the next 5 years. Then you come back to us with these projects and say, these are the ones we think, and here's how we're gonna spend the $5 million per year. Makes more sense to me, because then, especially like
Exactly what
we have new counselors.
again, that's I love this discussion. I
And
think
that
this
makes
is
sense.
fantastic amongst council. I'm not asking you guys to commit anything right now. I don't, that's not, I just want to have this bigger picture discussion with you guys in regards to the funding models that we need to start looking at for now and in the future. And as for the, the recommendations that can be making at council, this, $150,000 we're not going to spend on transportation management plan and asset management plan and road condition assessment. This 11.9 million asset that is asset right here is going to be peanuts. This is going to be, 40 to 50 million over the next 20 years. So then you got to start looking at that. And I realize that, that 50 mil may not ever be achievable, and we'll try to do things to creep our infrastructure out, but at least then you got to review what's.
I'll just make one last comment. I get it's kind of interesting because more likely in 2 weeks you'll be back and we'll be talking about sidewalks and trails. And there'll be a whole bunch of decisions. We got to look at 5 or 6 of these things already that's been presented to us and choose our priorities. And then presumably you'll come back with a budget again with a whole bunch more stuff. So again.
For water and then for sewer.
We're just.
I fully appreciate this. This is something that, that I struggle with on a daily basis.
Yeah, I bet.
To figure out how to make all these projects come to fruition for you guys. I mean, these are your budgets, these are your you know, what you guys want to see moving forward, so. Again, I struggle trying to make all of this happen for you guys, so. The more, the cleaner the goalpost for me, the easier it is for me to move ahead. And again, I'm not expecting this to come out of this meeting right now, but there's something to think about for the future. And yes, you are correct, Councilor King, we'll be coming back with the after transportation plan in the next few weeks. We can further discuss these if you like at that point, and we'll look at the total impact to potential capital programs when we start rolling everything in.
So your recommendation that you have here, is that what you would need right now?
Yes.
And plus the fact that Harbor Key has been highlighted as sort of number one, and the other three are shovel ready, and we're ready to
Ready to
move
go.
on those if we have get some money or if we decide to do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Certainly.
so are you moving the
Yeah, okay.
recommendation?
We're gonna move forward to Harbor Key, is that what I'm hearing? Next
Yes,
year,
that-
right?
That'll
For
be
24.
number one.
So you'll be, so sorry to interrupt you, Richard.
Yeah.
I'll be coming back with a capital
Correct, yeah,
request for
Yes.
2024
Yes.
to move forward with RP.
yeah, okay, thank you.
So do we need to move this recommendation that's there, which gives them the ability to you know, that the transportation master plan, asset management plan come back and we give them 150 in the 2024.
So I think we'd like, if this committee feels that it's important to do these plans, we'd like you to make that motion, and then it enables us to move that next step, the council ultimately the authority to approve it. You can't make those decisions, but if you're
Sure.
obviously feeling that that is important, this long-term strategy, we recommend making that motion, and then at some point we can bring it to council to get the final approval and the funding and all that stuff going.
And the third paragraph there, we've already sort of identified the
Yeah.
order we think was first. So does somebody want to make that
I
motion?
think Jim's got a motion.
Jim?
Warren.
Jim has a motion on the floor.
I think so.
Is there a motion on the floor?
Councillor
you
King,
please-
Councillor
Yeah.
King had made,
That particular.
yeah, the first, but we don't have a seconder.
Councillor Poderica seconding that. Are we okay to vote on it now? All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for it.
Listen, you know what, you're gonna have all of our blood pressure way up if you keep doing this and coming back with all this. He's taking it right now.
So what you do, Jared, is we have, take all this money, raise the taxes 25% this year where everybody hates us. Then you got 3 years to build a whole bunch of nice things so they forget about what we get.
That was increase of many of the other municipalities. Wow, yeah.
The camera's still.
I know. So we're gonna go back now to our agenda. And we have moved, staff report number 2 out, so do we have any in-camera motions for consideration or release? No. So are we ready for, Councillor King?
Terminated.
So keep terminating the meeting, who's seconding that? Zach?
I think I just got this.
Okay,
Johnny's not here, so he's gonna do it.
yeah, Councillor Bennett.
I gotta wait for lunch.
All in favor?
I'll do it, John.
Okay, thank you very much.